I don't know how this is going to work this morning. I always come up that way, so I'll come up this way today, so hope everything works out okay. Had my second eye surgery this past week, and it all went real well, and I'm very happy with the performance so far of my eyes, and very thankful to God in heaven, and that He's given doctors the talents to keep us old folks put back together and things like that. Do have to use some readers, so put these on look silly every now and then. So I was telling Brother Herman there that I used to make, you know how kids are, you make fun of people with glasses. What do you call them?
Poor eyes.
Yeah, poor eyes. And the little half-rimmed glasses. I had an English teacher, and she was one of those classic English teachers in Oklahoma, Altus, Oklahoma, that I had there. And she was one that I just I couldn't identify with her. She was from another planet, is what it seemed like to me. And she had these little half-rimmed glasses, and they were truly half-rimmed, and she was always looking at me like that, you know. And needless to say, I was not her star pupil. So, Miss Susan has her way with my English sometimes, so hopefully she won't do a lot of writing today about my poor English. Very happy to report that Wednesday night we had a large turnout of young kids here. I can't tell you how important that is for us as a congregation. I can't tell you how important it is that we all be a part of that to help out with and be a part of. It's an opportunity for you as a congregation to help build up this congregation. You can see our numbers over there. I got a thing this past week the church did here from 21st Century Christian. And they publish a book every year, and it's the Churches of Christ in the United States. And they sent us a thing to update our congregation here. Last update was in 2014. And we had, as a total, 60 members here. So what does it say over there now? Now, I don't know what that tells you, but it should tell you something. We all need to be about the Lord's Word, no matter where we're at. And I'm not talking to somebody that you're not expected to get up here and preach, but God does expect you to do some things. Being a Christian is not a bench warmer. If it is, show me in the Bible where God says it's okay, you can just take it easy and not do anything. Almost all throughout the Bible, God's Word says, I'm preparing you for something. I'm preparing you for good works. All of God's people have always had to be workers. Today is a special day. I want you to take a good look at my dress. It's not a dress. But my father thought that the best looking outfit was Wrangler jeans, new Wrangler jeans, these are new, only been washed once, and a white shirt and a bolo tie. He used to tell me, he'd say, son, that's just the perfect picture of a cowboy to me. My dad was a cowboy. And I'm a wannabe, I guess. I've been the proverbial rode hard and put up wet. You know what that means? No cool down. You just kind of got put back in the pen there. You're still breathing hard and all that. Master didn't give you a chance to cool off. I thought about fathers, and obviously Mark done such a good job this morning talking about fathers and responsibility. I talk to my son quite often. He's in Abilene. He's a preacher in Abilene. He's given a sermon today, and it's about suicides in the United States. We all know that. In fact, some of us more than likely either know of or work with, or heaven forbid, maybe a family member they've been a victim of that. I also read an article this week in the Christian Chronicle, which I strongly encourage you to read. If you'd like to be put on that list to receive a copy of the Christian Chronicle, There's a list there in the back on the foyer. All you have to do is put your name and your address, and they'll send you a free copy. And it's a periodical. I'm not sure exactly. I think it's monthly, or if not, it's every other month, something like that. And more or less, it just reports on things in the church and all things going on like that. Do you want to know what's going on in the church? And
Amen.
yeah, I do. If not, we're going to stay here in this one little old box, aren't we?
Yeah.
Not know what's going on anywhere. It's kind of nice to know. One of these young lady who was a foster child and had just recently graduated from high school, and I was kind of touched by her little editorial that she had wrote in there. It was a speech that she had performed, and they copied most of it. But she said there was some 40,000 foster children in the United States. I know we support a children's home here. We support at least 2 of them with the funds that we collect here. Our major contributions go to foster children's home, who many of us know. And that name is kind of befitting of what they do. They take in children that nobody else wants. They take in children that have been abused. They take in children that the parents can no longer take care of them. Not necessarily wanting to give them up, they just can't take care of them. And one of the beautiful things that foster children home does is they don't separate the kids. And the state calls them all the time and says, can you take these 4 kids? I think most I know that they've taken is 5, ranging in all ages. God bless Foster's Home for Children. You know, as thinking about fathers, and I'm really touched by things I know of as fathers. I look out amongst us and I see great men that have been fathers, men that I admire. I think of, in my head here, the past men that have been an inspiration to me. And I thought of their names this morning. Isn't that interesting that I can remember their names that made an impression on me? Can't you? Don't you want to be listed like that one of these days and remembered like that, dads, one of these days by those that's coming behind you? Sure you do. I hope you got a copy of the bulletin. My sermon is in there in an outline. I will try to stay to my outline, sort of. Hopefully I'm able to do that. Time just seems to fly when I get up here for some reason. I always wanted to be a good husband. I wanted to be a good provider. I wanted to be a good leader. Fathers and grandfathers are so important to a healthy family. I never realized that exactly until I become a grandfather. And when I look at my grandchildren, I know they need me. In fact, my daughter-in-law said, we need you. I said, what do you know, I'm ready to check out. You know, I'm overworked, underpaid. And Heather said, we need you. Who doesn't want to be needed? Everybody wants to be needed. Right? Yes, we want to be needed. Harmon, your grandsons need you. They need to see grandfather that's a spiritual leader, not just to his children, but also to his grandchildren, that do and say and be the things that Mark listed this morning. Men need to step up. Men in the church need to step up. What's it going to take? We're on a decline. You go to churches today and who's the dominant person there? Which gender? Sadly, it's women. Went to a marriage seminar video this past week. Randy was there. Randy and Julie was there. More women than men, huh, Randy? Yeah. Marriage is usually by 2 people, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Us men, we got other things to do. We don't need to go to stuff like that, do we? We know it all. They told me a bunch of things that I said in my head, I'm going, yeah, that kind of fits. Wasn't all good either. Wasn't all bad. I wanted to be a good dad. You know, even Jesus had a earthly father. Isn't it wonderful that God, in his infinite wisdom, knew that his son here on earth would need a good leader to show him and someone to help him, be a provider, someone that protected him. My son told me here a while back, he said, Dad, when I was a young boy, I never worried about anything because I knew you could take care of us. Fortunately, I've looked mean enough all my life that I've never been tested. Only a couple of times. But I'm thankful for that. But I'm not thankful. I'm not mad. I'm not upset. But I usually don't go around with a big smile on my face, and that has really hurt me. Because people are always walking up to me, what's wrong with Vern? How come he's mad today? I'm not. I promise you. Look at my son. He has the same look, mostly, or used to. You know, most people would agree that Jesus was a carpenter until about 30. And that's when he hung up the carpenter's apron in preparation for the work that he was sent to do. And he was probably a carpenter, and I've got the scriptures listed there. You can look at those. Because his father, his earthly father, was a carpenter. I wanted to be like my dad. I wanted to be like my dad. I loved my father, and I know the other siblings also loved them. There were 6 children in our family, and my dad provided for those. I can remember a night, a day, when my dad, in the cold winter of the plains of Oklahoma, Terry can appreciate that. In the plains of Oklahoma are like the plains of Texas. You can see for a long ways. Go to Lubbock, and you can see for a long ways. And nothing stops the wind. And I can remember on a cold winter day, my dad lost his job. Why? I don't remember. But I remember this. My dad took a job that was just barely enough to scrape a living out of. $1 an hour. $1 an hour. Working in a cotton compress. You lifted any bales of cotton lately? Pretty heavy. But my dad knew he needed to be a provider, and he was. My father taught me those things, and I've carried over those things, and there's one of the things I've instilled in my family. It's hard work. Could I get an amen out of my daughter? She's in the audience. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah.
You look out today, and you'll see Papa probably, what, Mariah? Sitting on his duff, or will Papa be doing something? Okay, she's scared. My father was a good provider. He was a good worker. He was a good builder. He could build anything. My dad could build anything. He built this is not necessarily, I'm not telling you this is what you need to do. But my dad drove a concrete truck at one time. And most of the time in a concrete truck, they got washout. You know, there's little left over. Well, my dad could come by our house in a matter of seconds. He could have a half of a driveway poured with that leftover, you know I'm telling the truth, with that leftover concrete by himself. Now, the driveway didn't look real pretty where it wasn't ended because, you know, he had to come back and there wasn't enough there to do the whole driveway. But my dad was like that. He could add on a room to the house by himself. He could plumb it up. Before I left Oklahoma in 1970 for good and moved to Texas to find my fame and fortune. Still looking, by the way, for some of that. We were building what we called cellars, dugouts. Later on, we improved that name to fallout shelters and things like that. I'm not sure what the name of it is today. Those that are looking for problems or whatever. And my dad, we laid cinder blocks. We built that cellar out of cinder blocks. And if you've ever laid bricks, my dad could lay bricks. Now, he wasn't a bricklayer, but he could do all that. And he was a good horseman. My dad knew how to break horses. And he knew a lot of other things. I can't list all the things that my dad did. And and sometimes had to do. And fathers pass on. They pass on all of these different values. Think about all the values. And I know somewhere out there in the audience, you may not have a good feeling about your father. I understand that. But we are in us. We make up God's house in here today, do we not?
Amen.
We make up what is called the temple of God, and we're all little bricks there. So we're in God's house. We want to know God's words. Maybe you didn't have a good father influence. I know of one boy that's deceased now. He had no idea who his father was. You men, don't be like that. You be the good father. You be that part in there that puts the stopgap in there that says enough is enough. I want to be a good father. I want to be a godly father. I didn't say a perfect father. There's no such thing in this earth as a perfect father. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to fall down. Your children are going to know that. They know, my kids know, and mostly my grandkids, for sure my kids, they know all my little Yes, I shouldn't have went there. They know all the little old things that, and as you get older, you can understand some of those. Fathers pass down values. The good father doesn't look at it and say, what's in it for me? What's this? What is it for me? Is it going to benefit me? No, it's for your family. Godly people, godly men need to see it like that. Don't go to the world and think the world's going to be able to show you that. Look at the world and see today. How messed up is it? And I know that's probably not a proper word to use. It's in pretty bad shape. Just think about it for a moment. How many children are out there with different last names? We were carrying some kids to school a couple of years ago, and I overheard them talking in the back there, and they were bragging. This one was bragging because out of the four, two of them had the same last name. I'm not throwing any stones. I'm just telling you facts. You men, you make a difference. You determine, I will make a difference. God expects men, and especially fathers, to be ever present, to be mentors for their family. Who do you want your kids to look up to? The TV? To Hollywood? Good grief. The politics? Who do you want them to look up to? What do you want them to see? What do you want them to see? I'm thankful for my wife. I was not there so much because I was being a breadwinner. There's one thing I instilled in my family, and especially my children, it was hard work. Don't expect somebody to give you anything. Don't take that attitude. You work for it. And I taught Jesus to my family. I did. To the best of my abilities. That's what God expects. Not perfection. And I wasn't perfect. There were sometimes I said, you know what, I don't even want to go to church. Thank God it's not my attitude today. And I went to a few late ballpark soccer game, t-ball. I'd get there late from work. And sometimes on the concerts, my daughter would be in, and my son. But I did my best to make them. But my wife was always there. She was the good listener. She was the good listener. I was too busy. You know how us men are. If you don't know how us men are, you need to come to the marriage enrichment seminar that Sweeney's putting on the video. Pretty good, huh, Randy, about boxes? and the Mark Conger is the man's name. Fabulous speaker, very good. And he was describing men's brains. He has a little model there of a man, and it shows a cutaway of his brain, and then it shows a little model of the head of a woman over here, and a cutaway of her brain, and describes the differences. And one of the notable things that he said about men was that they have all these little boxes in their brain. One particular box that all of us have is the nothing box. There's nothing there. We like to go there. He said, I'm not going to do this because you'd make fun of me, but he showed kind of a dumbfounded face of someone just sitting for hours, throwing the rod and reel it in, throwing it and reeling it in, for hours. The nothing box. And when you're sitting there and you're deep in thoughts, you're climbing down from that mulberry tree on the side of the river there when you used to walk in that sandy land, and you're there and you're revisiting that, and your wife walks up to you and says, "What you thinking?" What do we say?
Nothing.
Nothing. See, there you got the nothing box. The Bible gives us perfect examples of godly families. Godly families. Look in Ephesians, and I'll try to hurry through this. You need to leave? I'm sorry. In chapter 6 of Ephesians, chapter 1 of Ephesians. Here it tells us who the letter to the Ephesians is addressed to. It's addressed to Christians, those faithful believers. It's not addressed to the world. Oh, it could apply to the world. But Paul is speaking to Christians. And thus, speaking to Christians, he gives some values there, some things that he and Timothy and Silas and others have instilled in the Ephesian church there. And he talks firstly about wives and husbands and children, family. You can't talk about fathers without talking about family. That's what fathers are. They're part of the family. If you're here today breathing and seeing me, you had a father and a mother. But you had a father. And there he addresses in chapter 5, verse 21 here, it says here, kind of sets the tone, and I know this is probably referring to the preceding verses. They're talking about singing psalms and hymns and spiritual songs to one another and encouraging one another. I understand that. But chapter 5, verse 21 says, submit to one another out of what?
Fear.
What does it say? It doesn't say fear.
It says fear.
How about out of reverence for Christ? Your version doesn't say that? Verse 21?
Fear of God.
Okay. We're going to say reverence is a better word. I'm going to say reverence is a better word. We submit, whether you're a wife or whether you're a husband, because of who we are. It's addressed to Christians, so you're a child of God, and that's what this letter is addressed to, and it's addressed to all of us here. Whether you're man or woman, we all have to submit to God Almighty. Amen. He has to be the one that we revere. And if there is a godly fear. I don't know what your word, when you think of fear, I don't think of something necessarily good. But we fear the Lord. Yes. We know there is a higher power in charge there. And he tells us there beginning, before verse 22 through 24 there, talking about wives, but he begins it there with, everyone needs to submit. Out of the reverence for Christ, fear for God. Everyone. So that includes men and women. But it tells the women there to submit. Submit to your own husband out of respect, fear, reverence of God. You see, when you go into a relationship and it's not like that, it's not quite going to work the same, is it? I mean, if you've got a recipe here and you say, "Well, I'm not going to put in any chocolate. I'll put in some acorns." I know it calls for chocolate, but I'll put in acorns. Is that chocolate cake going to come out quite right? No. Remember, he's talking to Christians. And let me tell you something, as a husband and as a father, this is me. As a husband and a father or grandfather, your marriage relationship will be the closest thing on earth to what heaven is going to be like. You may or may not agree with that. They may just make the determining factor where you're going to spend eternity. Do you believe that? Well, I'll marry Susie and I'll be able to change her. Or I'll marry Bill. I like the name Bill. I'm going to change that. Bob. I'll marry Bob and I'll be able to change him. Maybe. Maybe. My father turned to God in his latter years. My father was always proud of all of his children. He loved all of his children. There probably were some favorites. Probably were. But my father loved all of his children and worked hard for them. Lost my train of thought there.
It's all right. That's all right.
Submit. For sure, the more important thing is for the husbands. All right, I know where's going with my train of thought now. My dad, when he died, was probably what I would call a good Baptist. And I know a lot of your minds out there going to different places. Don't want you to do this, but I would dare say that most of us in here have a little Baptist in our background. Or know someone that you love that. I don't know exactly where my father is. I know he's not here on earth anymore. But I do know who's in charge of where he's at. I'm not the judge, are you? Are you? No, you're not. That's only one person can be the judge. That's God Almighty. You husbands, I'll come to an end because I know some of us out there have problems sitting for a long time. I understand that. Sorry that what I say when I get up here is what I feel like we need to hear. And I'm not ashamed of what I say. I always liked hearing an older person tell of things that happened to them. Because you know what? They were real. And they were factual in that person's life. I know this. America, for sure God's church, needs men of honor. I've had young men tell me, well, I'm not going to be a preacher, but I'd like to be an elder one of these days. Guess what one of the qualifications for being an elder is? Manage your own household well.
Amen.
Your children have to be believers. Your children have to show respect. I look at my son and my daughter, and I've got a perfect son-in-law too. He's such a good man. He's a better father than I was. And he did not have a good role model. He didn't. I know his father. I'm not going to say his father's a bad man. I'm not saying that at all. His father's been a good provider. But his father didn't teach him the things that he does with his family, I don't think. Did they, Lowell? Why is that? Why does Lowell choose to do that? Is it because he honors God?
Amen.
Is it because he fears God? Is it because he loves his wife? Is it because he loves his children? Is it because he wants something better for his children? Is that a good thing?
Amen.
Absolutely is. You take an O out of good, and what you got? You got God. All good and perfect gifts come from where? Heavenly Father. Absolutely. Absolutely they do. I love my father. I know my father loved me. And he loved his other siblings. This ring I wear today was my father's. It's a horseshoe ring. This ring I wear today is, you know whose ring that is, don't you? I wear this in honor of my father. And I wear this one in honor of a covenant I made. An agreement that God consummated. You bet I'm going to have some fear of God. I know I have someone always watching me. If you have children, they are watching you. I met my beautiful granddaughter, Mariah, has such a beautiful dress on today, and I just love embarrassing my family. It's one thing you get to do as a grandfather. You got carte blanche. You just do that. They overlook it. And I said, that's such a beautiful dress. And she said, I wore it for you. And I told her, I said, I got a tie almost like that. There is no doubt in my mind my grandkids love me. No doubt. And I would go to the end of the earth for my family. I would. And they know that. I want my family to be in heaven. I want my family to be spiritual. I want my family to know the Lord. I think that's a good thing. You can make a difference no matter where you're at. God will take you wherever you're at. He can take you and use you. Look at the people he took and used. Murderers, liars, people that gave up on living, moved to other countries to try to escape. God, don't forget me. God's always seeking. He's seeking you right now. I don't know where you're at. Don't know what's going on in your life. Most of you here, unless you're visiting, which we're glad you're here visiting with us, make sure you fill out a visitor card. Most of us here are looking for something. We can help. Whatever you're looking for this morning. Come as we together stand and sing.